Hi guys, and welcome back to part 3 of the transition event. Now, already we've taken a look at predictable selling systems and why you're going to need them in place to actually help to grow your driving school. We've taken a look at setting goals, and I've used my own example to try and add a bit of clarity to all this. But now we've got to the section that's all about you. So this is all about your goals. Not just for 2019, but also where you wish to be in 3 years' time. So we spent a little bit of time on this, as I've already said, sort of 15 minutes. Everybody was busy scribbling away. And I basically asked the question, where do you wish to be in 3 years? What do you want your life, your business life, personal life, what do you want that to look like in 3 or even 4 years' time? I've already explained to you what my vision is. But now it's obviously over to you. Now, to give you some ideas, now it could be that you aspire to have, in this case, £50,000 worth of BMW. Some of you might, some of you may not. But that's the whole point. This is about you and nobody else. And, different things mean different things to different people. So you may have completely different visions as to where you want to be. I've already said my burning desire now is to have external offices and have Lee and Andy as directors, where both myself and Sandra can exit. We need to explore now what you wish to do. So, okay, if it's not a car, how about holidays? Everybody likes to have holidays, but once you set goals, it's likely that you can then start to pick and choose a little bit. And in this case, this is sandals. Sandals, if you've never been, is very, very different than any other 4 or even 5-star holiday I've ever been on. I mean, the place is just immense, and you can see why it gets so much publicity. Now, again, that may be something for you. There's no children, by the way, at Sandals. So if you've got family growing up, clearly this is not going to be for you. But if you're, like myself, a bit older, then this is a fantastic place to go and relax. So again, it's all about whatever your dream may be. Now, the last one, I apologize, the picture's not great, nor is the subject, I have to say. But this is taking a different slant on things. And as you may recollect, in June of last year, 2018, I went in on a replacement hip. It was in a private hospital. I was in there a couple of days, and fantastic. I couldn't have been better. It's like a hotel. But nevertheless, the point I want to make is, had I still been instructing at the time, it would have probably been at least 8 weeks before I was able to get back to work. Certainly if I was I couldn't have driven a manual car because it was my left hip that was done, and there was no way I would have been able to operate a clutch properly. As it turns out, I drive an automatic, and I was back driving in just over 2 weeks. But the point I'm making, as I said, is the fact that what would happen in your business right now if you were out of work for 8 weeks because, whether that's a scheduled operation or because you've fallen ill or something else, how would you be able to cope? Now, interestingly, there was one other member in the room on the day, and they went through something similar. They were very ill, and they were out of work. I think it was a similar sort of time span. And fortunately, they were in a position where they had a few franchisees working with them, and that obviously helped with their residual income. But just think about this for a second. What's your current situation? If you were suddenly not working for 8 weeks, what would actually happen? Do you have enough cash reserve to survive that? Because some folk do and some don't. So instead of like material wealth, like a nice car or going on holiday, it could be that you're just trying to give yourself a little bit of financial security. I'm in a position where I've got staff that run the driving school, so I could basically take 2 months out and it wouldn't actually affect my income one little bit, because I'm not involved in the day-to-day running of the school. I've got staff to do that. But that's because we've got to that level. And if you choose to get to that level, then of course you'll be in the same position. So, I just posed these questions, and that was then we sort of left it at that. Go and have a think. And what I would like you to do now you know, whether you pause this video, go and find yourself a bit of space, bit of free time, you know, give yourself, whether that be an hour, to really do some deep thinking and think about what is really, really important to you. You know, what is the big goal here? What do I want to do in 3 or 4 years? Do you want to be in the same position I'm in? And why not? I mean, I grew my school back in 2000 and around about 2012. So we went from 5 franchisees to 32 in 18 months. Okay, and I'm going to show you in a second exactly how I did that. But it's achievable. So if I can do that in 18 months, why can't you do it in 3 or 4 years? Because you've got me to help you. I didn't really have anyone in the industry to help me, because I don't know if anybody ever shared that information before. Hence the birth of ADI Success. But yeah, so give it some thought. As I say, pause the video, go away, have a little think about it, and then come back and we'll show you then how you can start putting all this plan together. I'm going to keep the video running now. Now, 1-page annual growth plan. We dish these out on the day for everyone to fill in. And of course, what they filled in on the day would more than likely change a bit by the time they drove home and give it a bit of thought. But at least it started the process. And I will make these downloadable for you. If you want one, you just simply download it. And you can go through the same process. So up in here, your goal. How many franchisees do you want working in your driving school? Now, I would set this as the annual one, okay? So this is for this year. So by December the 31st, 2019, how many franchisees would you like to have working in your driving school? Now, the thing to bear in mind here is that there is a bit of a time lapse here, isn't there? Because if you took on a PDI today, the likelihood is that, you know, if we use 6 months as a base mark, it's probably closer to 8 actually, depending on the amount of hours that you provide and lots of other factors. But let's just say 6 months. So if you're taking on PDIs in January, the likelihood is they're not going to emerge as franchisees until, you know, around about July time, July, August, or even September. So any you recruit after April of this year are probably not going to come into reckoning until next year. But that's fine, as long as you understand that. So you need to bear that in mind when you set your expectations. So let's just say, for example, then, okay, I want 4 franchisees working in my driving school by the end of the year. So what you do then, you place down here, how many do you have right now? Well, you may have 4, you may have none. So if you have none, then in here you put the gap. So your target is 4, but at the moment you have none. So in here the gap is 4, so you need to recruit 4. You know, you may already have 2, and the goal may be 6. So you need to recruit an additional 4. Does that make sense? So it's just the gap. So to achieve that, if you want 4 franchisees working on your school by the end of this year, then how many trainees do you need to recruit into your system? Well, I would say 5, because although it would seem logical that 4 and they all qualify and go through, but that is not exactly how it pans out, because out of those, let's say we recruit 5, it could be a number of reasons why one of those people might drop out of your training program. You know, they may have ill health. I've certainly had a few of those over the years. It could be their circumstances change. I even had one guy that became a millionaire. His sole parent died, left him £1 million. And strangely enough, he decided he didn't want to do this anymore. I had another person that ran off with the next door neighbour's wife, and that complicated his life somewhat. And he had the Scarper, and that ended his interest. So, you know, there are a number of reasons as to why they may drop out. And of course, they may not qualify. Now, under the new standards check system, which has now been running a year, all of the guys we've put through have all passed with flying colours. So we haven't had anyone fail to qualify. So hopefully that's a step in the right direction from the old PST system. But as I said, I'm just trying to, I would say realistically, if you want to have 4 emerges franchisees, you probably need to recruit 5. Now, how many have you got in your system right now? Now, again, let's say you already have 2 that you're currently teaching, so therefore you need 3 more, so the gap is 3. So now all of a sudden, you know, if you attract 3 more trainees, and then they go on and through the system and qualify, the likely it is then that you will end up with your target here of franchisees. Does that make sense? So this is the clarity that we're trying to achieve. You need to know, what we're doing is reverse engineering. We look at your goal for the year, and we're now going to track back as to how many trainees you need to attract. So again, let's just say 4 for argument's sake, or 5. Let's keep it at 5, with 4 of them qualifying. So you come down here, key initiatives. Well, we've already talked about you need a PDI recruitment plan, or you need a predictable selling system that's going to bring you in those trainees. Because if you don't have a predictable selling system, you're not going to get them, are you? So it's not going to work. Simple. It's a very simple equation. And you also need a new customer acquisition plan, which will be a different type of predictable selling system, or systems. You probably need more than one. Because these are going to come into play as required when these guys qualify. So again, to clarify, you need a system in place to attract the PDIs, sign them up, and then come July or August time, you're going to need the selling systems to keep them busy, to add to that. So when we look at metrics and KPIs are key performance indicators. What you're going to be doing monthly to get this done. So again, if we work on the basis that we need 5 trainees during the whole of 2019, let's just say we need then 1 every 2 months, sort of, to speak. So you've got 2 months basically to sign up your first one, January, February, and then March and April you're going to need another one. May and June, you're going to need another one. So do you know what I mean? That way then, instead of looking at this big picture of 12 months, you're now looking what you need to do on a monthly, or in this case, bi-monthly basis. Now, when you're actually looking to see how many, what you have to do this month, what you have to do this week, and what you have to do today, as we've already discussed, if you intend to have 4 franchisees working in your driving school before the end of 2019, we've already talked about the fact that may well take 6 to 8 months. So really, you need to attract and recruit these 5 PDIs in the first 4 months, in January, February, March and April. Because if you do that, if you have 5 in place by the end of April, then there's a realistic chance that all 5 of them, or let's say 4/5, will actually go on to qualify and start working in your driving school before this year is out. And then of course you've hit your target of 4 new franchisees, if that's what your target is. So I just wanted to make that clear. The sooner that you really do need to recruit them in the first part of the year to pay dividends in the second part of the year. Now I've already explained that we actually signed up 13 in the end, 13 PDIs during 2018. Now, those 13, one of them qualified last year, but the other 12, of course, we expect to qualify this year. So the work that we did in 2018 is going to pay dividends in 2019 and so forth. So now when we set our goals, we've got to be thinking not only what we're doing this year, but what we're putting in place for 2020, next year. Because if we're going to achieve our 3 to 4 year goal, we always sort of working a year ahead to do that planning. So hopefully that's sort of clarified that subject. And then you bring that back to what's happening this week. And then you bring that back to what's happening today. And this is a bit like my example of the marathon. Everything has to come back to 12 months, 1 month, 12 months, 3 months, which is a quarterly rock. Then you come back to 1 month, then you come back to 1 week, and then you come back to 1 day. Because when you focus on your business 1 day at a time, and you've got a plan in place and you can hit your goals on a daily basis, then of course you're going to achieve your annual goal. You have to, if you're on target. We're going to talk about 60 minutes. It's a general accepted practice in business that most successful business owners spend at least 90 minutes of the day, every day, working entirely on building their business. So this is not anything to do with what you do within the business. So in our case, teaching folk to drive, it's nothing to do with that. It's not doing customer records. It's not doing any of that stuff immediately connected to your day-to-day work. 60 minutes will be all about looking at your KPIs. What are you doing to attract? How is the predictable selling system working? Obviously, if you've got a managed service with us, we're taking a lot of that load off of you because we're doing it for you. But if you're doing it yourself, how many books are you sending out? Are you sending out enough? If not, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to raise the budget? Are you going to tweak the campaign? These are all things that you need to be doing. Are you processing your test passes? Are you processing your custom reviews? Are you actually adding these up to your website, onto the Facebook page, onto your GMB listing? These are all things that you need to be doing during that 60 minutes, because these are all things. And on the day, we kept using the phrase, make the boat go faster. And just to detract for a second or two, quite a few years ago now, actually, probably about 5 years ago, I went to a business event, and probably one of the most powerful business events that I've ever actually attended. And the guest speaker was a guy called Ben Hunt Davis. And he was an Olympian. And he was in the British boat racing team. I don't know what they call them. I think there's 8 of them in a boat. I'm not a big fan of boat racing, but I think there's 8 of them. And anyway, they went off to the Olympics and they failed miserably. I think they almost came last. They probably either last or close to last. And it was hopeless. And they all went away and decided that when they come back in 4 years' time, they're going to pull out all the stops and do everything they could possibly do to give themselves a chance of becoming Olympic champions. Now, again, when it comes to goal setting, to actually go from last to becoming Olympic champions is a bit of a ballsy goal by any stretch of the imagination. And, it makes what I've done pale into significance. Anyway, he sort of went on to explain what they did. And they analysed every single aspect of what they do, which is, boat racing. So every single thing that could possibly make the boat go faster, that is what they focused on with such detail you wouldn't believe. And he went on to explain. Now, it turned out that these 8 guys on the boat actually didn't really like each other. They had nothing in common. They didn't socialise. They weren't really friends. But they were all extremely determined to become Olympians. That was their big driving goal. We've talked quite a lot already about goal setting. And of course, this is probably one of the ultimate goals, to become Olympic champions. Now, did they know they could achieve it? No, of course not. But they were damn sure that they were going to do everything possible to try and achieve that goal. So they mapped back, exactly like I've just been explaining, what needed to happen over the next 4 years. So, a bit like me on the start line of the Barcelona Marathon. They're on the start line of, I don't even know where the Olympics were that year. But anyway, in that final race, this was their moment that they trained for. And then they took that 4 years. They made it, they divided it by 4, of course, into 1 year. And then 12 months. And then 1 month, and then 4 weeks, and 1 week and 1 day. So they knew every single day, what do we need to do today, guys, to make the boat go faster? And that was their only ever question. And it almost got so granular that they wouldn't do anything unless it was completely focused on making that boat go faster. And one really good example of that was during the opening ceremony. And again, as I said, I'm not like a massive fan of the Olympics, but I get the gist of it. And the opening ceremony, I would imagine, is one of the proudest moments of many people's lives, sports people, because you get to represent your country and you parade around the arena, flying the British flag. And I can only imagine it's an extremely proud moment. And these guys looked at that and they asked the question, will parading around that arena carrying the British flag make the boat go faster? And of course the answer was no. And they declined. And I think, and I don't know if I'm correct in this, but I think what he said was they were the first Olympians ever to decline to walk around the arena. That takes some balls, but it was not congruent with their plans that it would not make the boat go faster. So they didn't do it. Anyway, cut a long story short, they got through qualifying, they got to the last, the last race, and they won it. They become Olympic champions. And, and when they look back in the story that he told us was massively, massively powerful, very emotional, how they went from losers to winners. But everything, and the reason I'm explaining all this and the point I'm trying to get across to you is that it was done on a day-to-day basis. So what I'm asking you is, if you've got a goal, when you set your goal now, what are you going to do every day? What are you going to do to make the boat go faster? Because if you're listening to this, whenever that may be, tomorrow, what are you going to do before you actually go out and do your day job of teaching people to drive? What are you going to do in the morning, or you could do it at the end of the day? What are you going to do to make your boat go faster? And if you, to me, it was always in the morning. It was always 6 o'clock to 7:30 for me. It may well be, and I still do it now, years later. But it may be different for you. But this is where it really is powerful. So if ever you get into, if tomorrow after watching this, you get in your vehicle at 9 o'clock or whatever, and you start to go out teaching, ask yourself this question: what have I done this morning to make my boat go faster? Because if the answer is nothing, guess what? Your boat isn't going to go faster. Now, you may do it in the evening, which is fine. But every day that goes by, if you haven't done something within that 60 minutes, 90 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever time you can make available, your plan is just going to fall by the wayside. And you now need to go and tell all these people that you made public that you failed because you're not adhering to these disciplines. Okay, now this is deep shit, guys, and I'm getting into your heads here a little bit. But this is a process that has been rammed into me many, many times over the years. It absolutely works, and it works for all successful business owners. And I've already related to the fact that when I was introduced to this back in 2010, I hit my 90 minutes every single day, every day. And it was very, very unusual for me not to do it. And that's how I grew my own driving school from 5 franchisees to 32. In just 18 months, because every day I was making my boat go faster. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so we'll get into that a little bit more, but by all means download this and fill it out and go along with the flow. Now this is a driving school budget forecast planner. This is my own. Now I've removed all my figures, but I've got 2018-19, which is, of course, my current one. I've got my forecast for 2019, and I've even got a VAT forecast because we are going to go VAT registered this year, and I need to know what the figures are going to look like when that happens. And then this sheet is one I've given you for an example. Now, I've just put this up really to, everybody should have one of these. Now, mine is far more complex than anyone that was in the room because I'm obviously in a different place. And if I just go through it quite quickly with you, first of all, really important that you have budget and you have actual. And in here, it is a bit of conjecture sometimes and a bit of guessing as to what might happen. But you need to try and fill this in as accurately as you can. It doesn't have to be exact because it is a forecast. There will be things that you will get absolutely right because some things you pay like on direct debit and it is the same every single month, like contract hire, for example. So you'll be able to fill them in with almost 100% degree of accuracy. So up here in the top, franchise fees. Now you may or may not have them yet, but if you do, what is your predicted franchise fees coming in for the month? If you charge referral fees like we do, then that goes in the next column. Any other receipts, just covers a bit of a sweep up. Now, in my case, of course, I've got Mike, who's an employed instructor. So the money that comes in for his customers is obviously belonging to the driving school. So we need those figures in there. I've a new employee starting in Bridgewater on the 4th of February, and that's where his figures go in. And I'm seeking a new employee in Exeter, which I don't have right now, and I'm working on it. But if I'm successful, then his will go in there. So that will be my income. Then, of course, I get paid a salary out of the driving school, as does Sandra, as does Mike, my instructor. So those are my salaries. Now, you may put your own in as a salary or whatever. HMRC, tax and insurance. If you take a salary, then of course you have to pay that. Then you'll have fuel, maintenance account, which you'll all have. Contract hire. Now, whether you have contract hire or you don't, you'll obviously have a car that's going to have some expense attached to it. Vehicle insurance. And then I've got a section here, and of course I've got to double all those up for my employees, which you won't have. And then of course I've got pension contributions as well. Card processing. Obviously I do process quite a lot of payments from my franchisees. Mobile phones. I have a bookkeeper. I'm not going to go deep into that now, but we did discuss it on the day. And one of the first things you really want to recruit when you get your first few franchisees is a bookkeeper. They're so cheap and they do a fantastic job. And if you're spending any amount of your time crunching numbers and adding data, you're wasting your time. You need the reports, you need the data, but you don't need to be entering it and trying to look after it all yourself, as likewise with an accountant. Bank charges. If you've got a business account, you're going to have a few bank charges. I think it's like £6 or something, and not very much. And then, of course, your Facebook advertising promotion, your Google Facebook promotion. We have an office phone. We have quite a complex phone system here that we lease because then we can trade it in again. We don't need to be buying the thing. And then Tamar tracking numbers, which some of you may be using. JPCI is core charges. Our actual core charges are like £6 a month because we very rarely make calls out. If what we use most of the time is text to our pupils or our franchisees. A core rel is something I'll explain to you a bit later. Pitney Bowes is our postage. We have a franking machine because we do a lot of postage and it's just a bit cheaper. We have a database from Zoho, and again I can cover that one off. And of course public and employer insurance we have to have. Theory Test Pro, which a number of you might have. Vehicle livery, printing, vehicle repairs, fast dose and stuff like that. So I've actually produced, when I got back from the event, I found out that when I copied this across, some of the formulas weren't working properly. So I've actually produced something a little bit more realistic to what you guys might use, and I'll make that available for download. And I really strongly suggest that you download this, and you can edit this, of course, and fill in your own details. But you really want to start putting in your forecast, because if you're going to take on, obviously I've included the training fees in the other one as well. I do it as two separate businesses, as you probably know, but on the new one that I've prepared for you guys, I've added the training in as well, and the training costs, so the cost of books, cost of postage, sending them out, but also the fees that will come in from instructor training. So you need to add this in, because what I'm getting at with all this, when you fill one of these out, is you fill out your column, your sales and your expenditure, and at the bottom it calculates your pre-tax profit, because then when you start adding in examples, you can see what that's going to look like, and this is like so important, because if you've got your goal and you need to have something in place to visually see how that might be panning out. And like in my case, I can see when I take on an employee, upfront costs are quite high, and I might go underwater, so I might be making a loss in January, which I probably will. But in February, then all the income starts coming in, and then I can see that then goes into profit, and I can obviously gauge it all the way along the year. So I'm always looking at what my end game's likely to be. But again, really important that you get your heads around this, because I just cannot see any way that any successful business is going to grow without a forecast planner. I mean, on the first of every month, this is sacrosanct for me. I need to look and see what's been happening to keep control of the business. Okay, so we're covering off headspace as well because it is all connected. You know, what needs to happen? What needs to happen to make your boat go faster? So we've talked about the goals. You know what your goal is now annually. You know what you need to do quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily. So on that planner that I've just shown you, this is where you're going to track this information. You know, what are you doing daily, weekly, monthly, and so on. Your 60 minutes a day. I've already explained what you do in your 60 minutes is everything to do with making your boat go faster. So everything to do with growing your school. It's working on your business, nothing to do with working in it. And make yourself feel extremely guilty every single day that you sit in your tuition car and go to work if you haven't done something to make your boat go faster before you go to work. And this is the big thing with Headspace now, because virtually all driving instructors that I talk to focus entirely on cost. It's not about the cost, it's about the result. You know, early on in this presentation, I've shown you how much it cost me to attract a new trainee. I think it was like 250 odd quid, 260 pounds. But then when I've shown you what they were worth to me over 2 years, 10,500, that is what you need to be getting your head around. And this is a big shift for a lot of driving instructors and new driving school owners. It will become completely evident to you as you go forward. But you've got to focus on the result always and work backwards. And then you look at what it's costing you to provide that result. Never ever focus on the cost, always on the result. Yes, you have to have the money to meet the cost, but that's an entirely different thing. So always focus on the result, and then the cost will be evaluated as to whether it's worth doing something or it's not. But it's the result that matters. Okay, so we're going to end that little element of the presentation here. Again, this to do a little summary, it's all been about you setting your own goals now, what's important for you, where you wish to be in 3 to 4 years' time. Is it something that you really, really desire? Because you'll need that desire to make it happen. Or is it simply on your wish list? There is a massive difference. Once you've decided on that goal, that's your 3 to 4 year plan. What do you need to do in year 1, as in 2019? What are you going to do now to hit that that first segment of your target? And then, as I said, bring it back to quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily. So hopefully you can map it all out now, what needs to be happening on a daily basis. The planner that I'm going to give you will help you extremely, that will give you a lot of help in that direction to start filling that one out. And be totally focused on your 60 minutes per day. It could be more, it could be less, but whatever it takes to make your boat go faster. Believe me when I say this, I cannot stress this enough. This is the most important factor of all, that you completely have absolute clarity on it. It is what you do on a daily basis to work on your business that will make it happen. And if you find yourself doing anything in the morning that's not congruent to grow in your driving school, then you're just wasting your time and you're likely to come off track. And totally focus on the result, what needs to happen, and then work out the cost involved in making that happen, but focus always on the result. It's the return on investment. That's everything that we're talking about. Okay, guys, good. That's a lot for you to think about, so go and digest that. We're going to come back in the next part of the presentation, and we're going to take a look through the direct mails that we send out, because many of you, as I've already said, many of you are using us as a managed service, so we sort of pretty much take care of that for you. But you still need to look at your direct mails, because we don't, your business will be slightly different than ours, and we just want to look at the type of things that you've got in that direct mail to follow up the book. If you're not using the book system and direct mails at all, then nevertheless there may be some ideas in there that might be of use for you to inject into any system that you might be using that's different. So I'll catch you in the next one, and see you in a bit. Bye for now.